In the year 80 of the Common Era, 80,000 Romans are filing into the largest amphitheater ever built. They pour through 76 arched passageways on the ground level, each one numbered, each one designed to funnel thousands of bodies into their assigned seating sections in a matter of minutes. These passageways have a name. The Romans call them vomitoria, from the verb vomer, to spew forth. And for roughly the last 100 years, English speakers have read that word and decided it must mean what it sounds like. A room where banquet guests went to throw up so they could eat more. It does not mean that. It has never meant that. A vomitorium is a hallway. It is stadium architecture, not dining infrastructure. And this is not the only thing you believe about ancient Rome that is completely, demonstrably wrong. The vomitorium myth persists because it sounds just plausible enough. Romans did, occasionally, induce vomiting after excess eating. We know this because Seneca complained about it in a letter written around 63 CE, a sharp moral rebuke aimed at Rome's wealthy. Vomunt ut edunt ut vomant. They vomit to eat and eat to vomit. That is a philosopher shaming his social class for lacking self-control. It is not a description of standard practice, and it is certainly not a description of dedicated rooms. The confusion between Seneca's moral disgust and the architectural term for a stadium corridor hardened into popular fact somewhere in the mid-20th century, picked up steam through movies and bad textbooks, and now sits unchallenged in millions of minds. Mary Beard, the Cambridge classicist who has spent her career separating Roman reality from Roman fantasy, has called it one of the most persistent and wrong ideas about Roman dining. But here is the thing about wrong facts. They are never just wrong. They are wrong in ways that reveal something about the people who believe them, what they want Rome to be, what they need it to be. We want Rome decadent. We want Rome excessive. We want vomit rooms because they confirm the story we have already decided is true, that Rome was a civilization drowning in its own appetite. The real Rome was more interesting than that. And most of what you picture when you hear the word Rome is a painting someone made in the 19th century. Take the toga. Close your eyes and picture a Roman, and you see a man in a white toga. That man exists, but he is the exception, not the rule. The toga was roughly semicircular, up to 5.5 meters of heavy woolen fabric. It weighed several kilograms. It could not be put on alone. You needed a slave or a family member to drape it properly, folding and tucking in a specific sequence that took real skill. And it was expensive. For most of Roman history, wearing a toga was a formal civic obligation for elite male citizens on public occasions. Think of it as ancient Rome's tuxedo. You wore it to the Senate, to the courts, to official religious ceremonies. You did not wear it to buy bread. Ordinary Romans, the vast working majority of a city that held somewhere between 800,000 and 1.2 million people, roughly the population of modern Austin, wore a tunic, a simple belted rectangle of cloth, usually wool or linen, practical and cheap. Working men might not wear much more than that. And the togas that did appear were not universally white. The toga praetexta, bordered with a stripe of Tyrian purple, marked magistrates and freeborn boys. The toga candida was bleached white with chalk and worn by men running for office. The word candidate comes directly from that chalk-whitened garment. The toga pulla was dark, for mourning, and women never wore togas in respectable Roman society. A woman in a toga was a specific social signal. She was either a convicted adulteress or a prostitute. The entire population in matching white drapery is pure cinema. The real Roman street looked more like a Tuesday in any working city. drab, practical, stained. You ate in that street too, and you did not eat lying down. The image of Romans reclining on couches at lavish banquets, elbow propped on a cushion, grapes dangling overhead, is real. But it describes a very specific practice among a very specific class. The triclinium, the three-sided arrangement of dining couches, was for the cena, the main evening meal, at elite households on formal occasions. Most Romans ate the way most people in Manhattan eat, standing at a counter, on the move, something hot and cheap. Pompeii's archaeological record reveals approximately 150 thermopolia, hot food counters, for a city of roughly 11,000 people. That ratio tells you everything. These were stone counters with circular openings where terracotta vessels held stews, lentils, wine. Behind the counter, painted walls displayed the offerings. The height of the counters was built for standing customers. At elite banquets, women in the Republican period were expected to sit upright rather than recline. Reclining was a male privilege that women gained only gradually during the late Republic and Empire, and even then, it was socially contested. Children and lower status guests sat on stools. The reclined dinner party was the exception. The thermopolium was the rule. If you are wondering what else the movies got wrong, let me ask you a question. What is the most famous hand gesture in ancient history? You are picturing a thumb turning downward. An emperor in a gilded box, his arm extended, his thumb pointing at the ground. Death. That image comes from a single source, and it is not Roman. It is a painting. In 1872, the French academic artist Jean-Léon Gérôme produced Police Verso, a dramatic canvas depicting a victorious gladiator standing over a fallen opponent while the crowd signals with turned thumbs. That painting electrified 19th century audiences, and when Ridley Scott made Gladiator more than a century later, he recreated Gérôme's composition almost exactly. The image burned into the modern mind like a brand. The Latin phrase polis verso does appear in ancient sources. Juvenal uses it in his satires. But verso means turned. It does not specify a direction. Turned up, turned down, turned sideways. The honest scholarly answer is that we do not know. Anthony Courbet, who has studied Roman gesture more carefully than almost anyone alive, argues that the death signal may have been a thumb thrust forward or sideways, mimicking the motion of a sword, while the mercy signal was a concealed thumb. Pollis compresso, the thumb pressed into a closed fist. The thumbs up equals life, thumbs down equals death binary that every viewer carries in their head has no solid ancient source. It was invented by a painter in Paris and confirmed by a filmmaker in Hollywood. But here is what makes the gladiator question genuinely interesting. And it is not the gesture, it is the money. We imagine gladiatorial combat as a slaughter. Every fight ends in death. Every arena is a charnel house. The reality is that gladiators were enormously expensive. A lanista, the trainer and owner of a gladiatorial troupe, invested months or years of specialized combat training, medical care, housing, and high-protein feeding in each fighter. A skilled gladiator was a capital asset. Killing him was like destroying a racehorse mid-season. Georges Ville's landmark statistical analysis of gladiatorial inscriptions, published in 1981, estimated that in the first century of the Common Era, roughly 1 in 5 bouts ended in death. 1 in 5. That is not nothing. By any modern standard, a 20% chance of dying every time you go to work is horrifying. But it is not the universal bloodbath that fills the popular imagination. Graffiti from Pompeii records the career statistics of named gladiators. Individual men with names, fight records, win-loss columns, including one fighter who survived 34 bouts with only a single loss. in which he was granted missio, mercy. By the imperial period, professional referees called the summa rudis could stop fights. A defeated gladiator could raise a finger to appeal for his life. The decision rested with the editor, the sponsor of the games, guided by the crowd. But sparing was common because the economics demanded it. A dead gladiator was a dead investment, and the men who owned them were businessmen before they were showmen. This is where Rome becomes something other than spectacle. The machine underneath was always calculating, and the most famous line ever associated with the arena proves it. Ave Caesar, morituri te salutant. Hail Caesar, those who are about to die salute you. You have heard this phrase. You have seen it in a dozen films, spoken by rows of doomed gladiators with rigid spines and dead eyes. It was said exactly once in all of recorded Roman history. Suetonius documents the incident in his Life of Claudius. In 52 CE, Emperor Claudius staged a naumachia, a mock naval battle, on the Fucine Lake, using condemned prisoners as combatants. Before the fighting, the prisoners called out, "Hail Emperor! Those who are about to die, salute you." And Claudius, apparently unsure how to respond, said, "Aut non," or not. The prisoners took this as a pardon and refused to fight, causing a minor administrative crisis. That is it. One instance. Condemned criminals making a sarcastic appeal to a confused emperor. It was not a gladiatorial greeting. It was not a military salute. It was not a tradition. It was a single, awkward, half-comic moment that 19 centuries of repetition turned into ritual. I want you to pause on that for a moment. Think about how many facts you carry about Rome that come not from Rome, but from someone else's painting, someone else's film, someone else's need for the story to work a certain way. Consider the fire. Rome burns in 64 CE. Nero fiddles. You know this. Except the fiddle will not be invented for another 1,000 years, and the more careful Roman historian says something quite different from what you expect. Tacitus, writing roughly 50 years after the event, reports that Nero was at Antium, modern Anzio, 30 miles from the city, when the fire broke out. He returned to Rome and organized relief efforts, opening his own gardens to shelter the homeless, arranging emergency food supplies, and lowering the price of grain. That is Tacitus, who did not like Nero, who had every reason to make him look terrible, reporting that the emperor handled the disaster competently. Suetonius, who collected gossip with the enthusiasm of a tabloid journalist, claims Nero watched the fire from the Tower of Maecenas and sang the Sack of Ilion in his stage costume. A lyre performance, not a fiddle. Even Suetonius does not claim the instrument that the English phrase made famous. And Cassius Dio, writing more than a century after the fire, embellishes further. The story grew in the telling. Modern historian Edward Champlin argues that the singing tale was likely political slander, amplified by Christian tradition, that blamed Nero for the persecution that followed the fire. The fiddle is an anachronism. The callousness is probably a fabrication. But the image persists because it is too perfect to surrender. The mad emperor playing music while civilization burns. We need it. Rome does not care what we need. Speaking of things Rome does not care about, look at its statues. Walk into any museum in the Western world and you will see them. White marble, clean lines, the pure aesthetic of classical civilization. They were painted, every one of them. Ultraviolet fluorescence analysis and chemical testing of surviving marble surfaces have revealed extensive traces of pigment. Vivid reds, deep blues, warm yellows, flesh tones, gilded details. A marble Augustus in full military dress would have had painted skin, dark hair, a crimson and purple cloak, gold highlights on his breastplate. He would have looked to modern eyes like an oversized painted figurine. The whiteness that we associate with classical purity is an accident of weather. Rain and sun and 2,000 years stripped the paint away. And when Renaissance artists and scholars rediscovered these sculptures, they saw bare marble and assumed it was intentional. Johann Joachim Winckelmann, the 18th century German art historian who essentially founded the academic study of ancient art, declared white marble the ideal of beauty. He built an entire aesthetic philosophy on a mistake. That philosophy influenced 500 years of Western art, architecture, and design. The neoclassical buildings in Washington, D.C., the Capitol, the Supreme Court, the Lincoln Memorial, are white because a German scholar in 1764 looked at a weathered statue and saw intention where there was only erosion. Rome was not austere. Rome was loud. Let me ask you something. If you have ever heard that Rome fell because of lead poisoning, lead pipes, lead-sweetened wine, an empire slowly going bad from its own plumbing, you are carrying another myth that sounds elegant but collapses under chemistry. The word plumbing does come from the Latin plumbum, meaning lead, and Romans did use lead pipes extensively. But a 2014 study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, analyzing sediment cores from the Tiber and the harbor at Portus, found something specific. While Rome's water contained roughly 100 times more lead than local spring water, the absolute levels were unlikely to have been truly harmful. Why? Because the interior walls of Roman aqueduct pipes developed a crust of calcium carbonate, mineral scale, that lined the lead and dramatically reduced leaching. The pipes sealed themselves. Lead exposure was real and probably caused health problems for some individuals. But attributing the collapse of a multi-century empire spanning 3 continents to a single toxin is like blaming a car accident on the color of the paint. The empire did not fall like a building. It sagged like a tent with the poles slowly pulled out. The traditional date, 476 CE, marks the moment a Germanic general named Odoacer deposed a teenager named Romulus Augustulus, the last Western emperor, whose name was almost parodically symbolic: Little Augustus, Little Founder. The event was so undramatic that contemporaries barely remarked on it. Meanwhile, the eastern half of the empire, what we call the Byzantine Empire, though they called themselves Romans, continued for nearly another 1,000 years, until Constantinople fell to the Ottomans in 1453. The fall was a transformation stretching across 2 centuries of administrative fragmentation, economic contraction, shifting military alliances, and negotiation with Germanic peoples who were themselves, in many cases, Romanized soldiers and officials. Scholars still argue about whether to call it collapse or metamorphosis. Both sides agree on one thing: the cinematic version, where barbarians storm the gates and the lights go out, never happened. And the Rome that was transforming was not the Rome you picture. It was not a city of identical Southern Europeans in white togas. At its peak, the empire stretched from Hadrian's Wall in northern England to the Euphrates in modern Iraq, from the Rhine to the Sahara. Isotopic analysis of skeletal remains from Roman London has identified individuals of North African, Mediterranean, and sub-Saharan African origin. Emperor Septimius Severus, who ruled from 193 to 211, was born in Leptis Magna, in what is now Libya. Trajan and Hadrian came from Spain. Diocletian and Constantine came from the Balkans. The Roman identity was legal, not ethnic. It was about citizenship, not complexion. In 1901, a skeleton was excavated from a Roman cemetery in York, in northern England. She was buried with bracelets of jet and elephant ivory, a blue glass jug, and an openwork bone plaque inscribed with the words, "Sister, hail. May you live in God." Cranial and isotopic analysis, conducted more than a century later, identified her as likely of mixed North African and European heritage. She was wealthy. She was Christian. She was Roman. She was buried in Yorkshire 17 centuries before anyone would have used the word multicultural. Scholars call her the Ivory Bangle Lady. Her grave goods sit in a museum in York, and they tell you more about what Rome actually was than any film ever made. If you have watched this far, I want to know which of these surprised you most, or which myth you carried longest before someone corrected it. Tell me in the comments, because this is how the real Rome works. Not in the grand gestures, the dramatic thumbs, the theatrical fires, but in the specific, documented, unglamorous details that make the civilization legible once you learn to read them. There is one more. Roman marine concrete, the mixture used in harbor walls and breakwaters, has survived 2,000 years of saltwater immersion. Modern Portland cement concrete in the same conditions degrades within decades. In 2017, geologist Marie Jackson and her colleagues published a study in American Mineralogist explaining why. Seawater, percolating through Roman concrete, triggered the growth of aluminum tobermarite and philipsite crystals within the material, mineral structures that actually reinforced the concrete over time. The Roman recipe, recorded by Vitruvius in the 1st century BCE, used volcanic ash from the region around Puteoli, lime, and seawater. Vitruvius wrote that the mixture becomes a single stone mass, proof against the waves, and every day becomes stronger. He was not exaggerating. He was describing a chemistry that modern engineers are only now beginning to replicate. Roman harbor concrete is not universally superior. It cannot bear the structural loads that modern concrete handles in high-rises and bridges. But in the specific environment of salt water, Roman builders 2 millennia ago created a material that heals itself with time, while everything we pour crumbles. Rome did not look the way you think it looked. Its statues were painted. Its people wore tunics. Its gladiators usually survived. Its most famous hand gesture was invented by a French painter. Its most famous last words were said once as a joke. Its emperor did not fiddle. Its vomitoria were hallways. Its concrete gets stronger while ours gets weaker. The civilization that built the roads your highways still follow, that wrote the legal codes your contracts still echo, that designed the calendar hanging on your wall, that gave your language half its vocabulary. That civilization has been buried under 2 centuries of paintings and a century of films that replaced it with something simpler, louder, and wrong. The real Rome is quieter than the myth. It is a woman buried in York with ivory on her wrists and a prayer on her lips. It is volcanic ash mixed with seawater, hardening in the dark for 20 centuries, growing stronger while no one watches. If you want to keep seeing Rome as it actually was, not the Hollywood version, not the textbook version, but the version that survives in the stone and the inscriptions and the chemistry, subscribe. There is more to correct. There is always more to correct. The myth is loud. The record is patient.